You might have principled oppositions to how Tommy Robinson does his business. But it is irrefutable that Tommy Robinson has done less harm to this country than some of the Tory politicians, including Priti Patel, that Reform would probably welcome as defectors. More importantly, nobody on those peaceful Unite the Kingdom marches has done anything untoward to warrant such contempt by the people that they voted for. Donald Trump doesn't feel the need to distance himself from even the kookiest elements of the MAGA movement, or he doesn't even feel the need to invoke the name Nick Fuentes when people try to pin him as a white supremacist. When hostile press attempt to pressure him, Reform should be wise enough to do the same. This entire article is just encouraging them to copy MAGA and win. Reform would also do well to remember that 4 independent Muslim MPs running exclusively on a pro-Gaza ticket were also elected to Parliament, 5 if you're counting Jeremy Corbyn. The prospect that Reform could win large portions of the Muslim vote without backtracking on the modus operandi of the party is a delusional proposition. But Farage made that exact suggestion when speaking to Winston Marshall this month, and you should be watching Winston Marshall's podcast because he's getting fantastic interviews recently. Farage said, quote, "If we politically alienate the whole of Islam, we will lose by 2050. Again, if incorporating Islamic social teaching is incompatible with the Christianity enshrined in England's unwritten constitution, monarchy, and the established church, is Farage's vision of winning, then I cannot support Reform. Nor is such appeasement an expedient electoral strategy, and this was the important thing I wanted to hammer home. Pandering to British Muslims will only estrange the indigenous white working class voters which Reform needs to win. As my friend Ayaan Hirsi Ali often reminds us, Islam does not care about abstractions like religious freedom or family values. It cares only about dawah, the clan and the ummah, that which advances Islam. And moderate-minded Muslims like Zia Yusuf or Rakib Hassan, who actually I've spoken to about this, and he said this was a fair article. I, again, don't want to leak private conversations, but Rakib Hassan, himself a practicing Muslim, who I've spoken about before and about his book and have disagreed on matters of social policy, said that this is a fair assessment of Reform UK and some of their pitfalls, so if even he's saying it as a Muslim, they should probably pay attention. They are a minority. According to polling by the Henry Jackson Society, which Farage himself cited on a Sky News debate with Trevor Phillips during the election, 3/4 of British Muslims believe Hamas committed no atrocities on October 7th, and more than half view Hamas favourably. 52% agree with Labour MP Tahir Ali that the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions, read Muhammad, by drawing Muhammad, should be a crime. So they agree with blasphemy laws. Most alarming is that the extreme views are concentrated in the 18 to 34 and British-born cohorts, meaning radicalisation is happening at home and only getting worse. Integration is not working. Both Conservative and Labour governments alike have allowed a 700-strong Muslim activist network to fester in the Home Office and produce reports which call the grooming gang scandal a grievance narrative invented by right-wing extremists. The appetite to permanently expel political Islam from public life is only growing, and instead, Nigel Farage is worried about alienating it. This will be a fatal mistake for Reform and the country to make. Being frank, figures in the media space and within Westminster are perturbed by Farage's reluctance to lead and his frequent backtracking on the most pressing issues. And this is not just people on Twitter or random family members of mine. These are high-profile people who would otherwise be doing Reform's PR for them and affording them policy ideas. And they're being estranged, not just implicitly by the retreat from positions like the mass deportation of foreign criminals by Nigel Farage, or the appeasement of political Islam, but also the attitude of Richard Tice, who says, we don't want that lot, and by proxy, anyone who might have sympathies with that lot, even if they don't go on Tommy Robinson's marches or come out in support of Tommy Robinson. As my friend Robin Alice, you should be reading her stuff, by the way, in The Critic, put it recently, to engage in British politics is to accept disappointment as a daily ritual. The last thing an insurgent party needs is dissent within the ranks, and the lads out on the lash vibe that Reform has at present just isn't good enough. It's not serious enough. Rupert Lowe understands this, and he's much more direct, much more informed, much more concise, and very assertive about what the tough policies he thinks needs to be done must be done. Far from being the presumptive king of the British right, Farage looks more and more like Lear, alone in the wilderness while his offspring squabble over who gets to inherit the crown. And I don't say that insultingly, I say that trying to urge Farage to take up the crown and make sure there is no doubt in who has the right to rule. He complains about woke Jaguar adverts while more pressing problems escape his attention. If he doesn't exert authority, specifically on the issues his supporters look to him to address, then we will lose another 5 years to the Lib-Lab-Con consensus. Note, we will lose another 5 years. I am including myself in the we there because I voted for Reform and I want them to do well. Reform only stand to gain from being bolder. They should not be afraid to support policies such as the mass deportation of over 1 million foreign criminals in Britain, which Rupert Lowe came out and did, or to oppose the long march of Islam through Britain's laws and institutions. The BBC has called the countryside racist, so who cares if they throw the same slur at Reform too? I say, as a critical friend of Reform UK, please sort it out. The hour is too late for infighting and cowardice. Now, I wrote all of that, and I posted that in a tweet, a promotion to the article as I usually do. And I said, we need to talk about Reform UK. I was vocal about voting for them in the last election. I praised their contract with the people. I've spoken to their MP staff and members, many of whom are good people, but I cannot support them while they continue to soften immigration and Islam. I remain a critical friend of the party who wants any insurgent political movement with half a chance of fixing Britain to succeed, but in its present state, it has its priorities wrong. It estranges credible allies like Ben Habib while hoping to appease hostile media and attracting Tory MPs with inexpugnable records of ruining this country. Richard Tice denounced the crowds at the Unite the Kingdom rallies on GB News, saying we have nothing to do with Tommy Robinson or all that lot. I don't attend those marches, but I am concerned about the knee-jerk need to disavow thousands of Reform voters through guilt by association. And I said about Tommy Robinson, which I've already covered. And while they alienate working-class Brits, Farage insists if we politically alienate the whole of Islam, we will lose. Some in Farage's orbit, trying to court his favour, are too afraid to mention this to him and his party's unpopularity among their core supporters, not picking up new ones, but losing their existing core base and failing to gain as much ground with people who would be attracted to a stronger message as they could have. My point was they could be gaining more people even faster if they just were as strong as Donald Trump. All the while, the Conservative Party regains lost ground. And I said in here, I don't want to be an MP. I just want a viable political vehicle for restoring Britain to its full potential and former glory. Right now, reform isn't it. I promise you, though, it could be. That was the message I was trying to convey. Richard Tice, who was not quoted in this, very soon after I sent this out, said, delusional garbage from Connor. Seems to miss simple facts. Membership is now 100,000 and rising. In the new year, likely more than the Tories. Again, the Conservative Party have hemorrhaged membership since cooing out two of their democratically elected leaders. Also, the membership thing for Reform is different because you're buying basically a share in a company, and I have heard that it's very difficult to cancel your membership because there is no straightforward way of doing it on the website. You instead have to send off a contact request to Reform and wait for them to get back to you. So what will be more telling is the number of membership non-renewals. And I'm not saying it's going to go down. I'm not encouraging it to go down. I'm just saying the membership numbers at the moment as presented by Richard Tice, who is clearly insistent on defending the party from any criticism, even friendly, aren't that trustworthy. Rising in polls to record highs of 22%. The Conservative Party is still 28%. Labour are incredibly unpopular. You should be out in front of both of them right now. No one stronger in Parliament than us on immigration net zero. Sure, the bar is in hell. Because all the parties are saying, would you like unlimited foreigners and also to have the highest energy prices in the world and shiver to death at home because we're obsessed with wind turbines? Just not doing that is the bare minimum. Reversing those problems is even better. And notice I didn't say net zero because I'm not criticising them on net zero because they're doing an excellent job on energy. Richard Tice, very competent Chancellor, 100%. If Richard Tice were Chancellor, I'd be very happy. There'd be more money in my pocket, energy would be cheaper, I'd be able to afford a home and feed my family. And I think he's clearly a fantastic businessman. He clearly has a brilliant head on his shoulders when it comes to issues like the Bank of England needlessly creating and repaying its own debt. Brilliant on economics. I think Richard's absolutely great. As a spokesman on other issues, clearly here, shoots from the hip a bit too much and needlessly insults otherwise allies. I responded to Richard with the screenshot of the passage of the Tommy Robinson paragraph in there. Richard, there was no need for insults. I didn't insult you or anyone in Reform. To the contrary, I said its MPs, organisers and supporters are good people. Like I said, I'm a critical friend who voted for you, specifically in Bexley in 2021. Richard Tice ran as my local MP in December 2021, and I voted for him because I really wanted him to win at the time. This was when he was still the leader of Reform UK. Reform were a fledgling party. There was no prospect of Farage coming back. So, been a friend of theirs for a long time. So it was a bit sad, really, but there you go. I praised Lee Anderson's defection in 2023, which is one of the reasons why I was kicked out of the Conservative Party, as well as saying I voted for Richard Tice. I've shared those screenshots on my show before and on Twitter. And I voted for Reform in July. I spoke at a fringe event at your conference and to MPs privately since. This is what I was talking about, the instinct to attack supporters and good faith critics. This isn't the way to win undecided voters nor to retain core supporters. And Richard decided to respond to this with the Joe Biden tactic. Connor, it's your article that's garbage, so I call it out. Look at the facts of what we're achieving. Again, I at no point have insulted or attacked Reform. I've no point discouraged them from trying to win. I'm encouraging them to be stronger and take ground which is available for the taking, which I think would actually benefit them electorally and also be policies which benefit the country. And I have offered all of this advice publicly and privately. A bit more publicly because it wasn't listened to privately. Without the ambition to take a position of power in the party for myself. Because I don't want to. I'm happy doing my job. I love working with Ayaan Hirsi Ali. I love presenting my show to you guys and hopefully contributing something valuable. I'm really enjoying working with the New Cultural Forum, my friend Harrison Peer. And I feel like someone like Douglas Murray has contributed just as much to the discourse as someone like Nigel Farage, and he's never needed to run for office. And I would much rather occupy that position and leave the running to office to other good men that I know who I can help provide research and policy ideas to. Because there are roles for all of us and we shouldn't step on our toes. And I feel like this was taken in the worst possible faith interpretation, and it didn't go down well, actually, as you can see by the ratio of likes to comments here, because the second comment was just interpreted as needlessly malicious and on the offensive. And so my response to Richard was, my point, Richard, is that the growth potential is being limited by alienating people who would otherwise do free promotion for you. This is a real phenomenon I'm speaking to among members and prominent commentators who are inclined to support reform. Donald Trump won all branches of government and the popular vote among Latinos, with stronger policies such as mass deportations and bringing aboard all sorts of allies. Your instinct to soften on immigration and Islam and to attack and denounce supporters, now me included, isn't doing the party any favours. All the refutations you made are beside the points I raised. Even if I, the messenger, am shot, I would hope the message is considered eventually. I just want a peaceful, prosperous, culturally homogenous country to raise my family in. And that's a very pressing concern for me in the next couple of years, because, I'm going to have my first, hopefully, starting late next year when we're all settled into the house, if the bloody mortgage thing ever clears. So, I don't want to do a woe is me segment. I just thought I'd address this in the clearest possible way, because, it's not every day that an MP that you've praised and voted for and campaigned for goes to you on Twitter when you write, I think, a fair, balanced and well-intentioned critique of the party, trying to encourage them to win. I'll end this by saying that I think what Rupert Lowe is doing is excellent, both as his questions and his strengthening rhetoric. I think Nigel Farage is in prime position to take up the mantle of presumptive king of the right, and therefore Prime Minister whenever the next election happens. I would encourage them to get their policy institute underway and to stop astroturfing their own spokespeople who have zero organic appeal. And I'm not making that allegation spuriously, just because there is someone who has been profiled on Sky News recently who is on the payroll of Isabel Oakeshott. I personally discouraged someone in Reform from paying an online influencer who doesn't have the best reputation within the sphere to make content on their behalf. They've done this before with another guy. They were going to do this again with someone else, and I advised against it. And I advised against it without trying to take the money for myself, by the way, because this person then said, well, do you want to do it? And I went, no. I just don't want them to employ grifters. I want them to employ people that know what they're talking about, that have credibility, that will advance the party. And look, I'm not wedded to any particular party, funnily enough. I'm agnostic about which movement that is most viable will give me a country that I want to raise my kids in. At the moment, Reform is in pole position and it has a lot of potential, but I'm worried that they're drawing up the drawbridge to the best-spirited critics and those who have policy suggestions to offer, who want nothing in return other than to see them succeed and reap the rewards of a prosperous, lower-crime, culturally homogenous Britain. I hope that perhaps this clarification is taken in a lot better faith than the initial article and tweets were. That's all. And to everyone who is involving themselves at the Reform branch level, who is going to stand as a candidate on the shared principles of this show and hopefully that you and I would agree on, I wish you the absolute best of luck, and I thank you for all that you are doing behind the scenes, probably thanklessly, to try and rebuild this country. Again, messenger shot. Hopefully the message gets through in the end. Thank you for watching that clip from Tomlinson Talks. If you liked that and you would like to see more, you can get the full 90-minute show every week on a Wednesday afternoon, live from 3 p.m., only on lotuseaters.com, and all of the other content that my colleagues produce behind the paywall for as little as £5 a month. Thank you very much for supporting us, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, goodbye.